How dare this elitist, Democrat, Marxist, BLM sympathizer? Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Next Level. I'm JVL here with my best friends, Sarah Longwell and Tim Miller of the Bulwark. Guys, Donald Trump.
The New York legal system really working in our favor right now. Law and order is here.
Sam Waterston went and got his guy. No, I mean, not really. That's not what happened. But there were consequences.
Oh, is that what that was? The Law and Order theme?
That was the Law and Order theme.
No, was that not good?
I didn't pick it up, and it's a highly recognizable theme song. But it's fine, no matter. I love the smell of accountability in the morning.
Let's hear you try to do it.
Donald Trump has suffered some consequences for the first time since he got gonorrhea as a college student. And he, a jury took 3 hours. 3 hours. That seems to be quite quick, by the way, by the standards by which juries operate. They had a complicated charging document with, very complicated details about how to think of different aspects of the case. And they came back and they found $5 million worth of damages for both sexual battery, sexual assault, and defamation against the former president of these United States. Let's just start with how this made you feel, Tim.
It made me feel all warm and fuzzy. And just to get little George Santos lagniappe, thank you to New Orleans listeners who corrected me. Like JVL, I'm starting to accustom myself to my new culture. I apparently pronounced out with a little too Frenchy and not enough Southern last week. A little lagniappe from George Santos. It made me feel really great. There's some mixed feelings on the inside, which I want to get to next, but I just want to focus first on the positive. Good on E Jean Carroll for doing this. That it is. Obviously, she was subjecting herself to unbelievable amounts of scrutiny and vitriol to try to do this happened 30 years ago thing. It took a lot of gumption to do that. And I'm happy that she did. I'm happy for her. Happy for my friend Robbie Kaplan, who is her lawyer, who absolutely sunned Donald Trump in that deposition. It was her deposition video versus Donald Trump was so great. If people haven't had a chance to watch it, they absolutely should, where she basically gets him to admit that he liked sexually assaulting people. That probably didn't help him, I don't think, in the jury deliberations. So that made me very happy. Donald Trump's consequences
you don't think
make me
that
feel
when
happy.
He said it was fortunate that powerful people used to be able to do whatever they wanted, that played well with the jury?
Fortunately or unfortunately, he didn't take a side. He said it could be fortunate or it could be unfortunate.
No.
That
He said
unfortunately
first. And then said, or fortunately.
Or fortunately. Fortunately for me, maybe. Unfortunately for the women, but fortunately for me, stars can grab pussies whenever they want. So, great job by Robbie. And I just, look, I think we can get into all the political stuff. I was doing a radio show yesterday where they're like, well, this doesn't mean Donald Trump's going down. And I'm like, okay, well, if our bar for happiness and success is the complete decimation of Donald Trump and his political project, well, we're never going to be happy. So we might as well enjoy the small battle victories. And this was one.
Sarah, I have a question for you. The Republicans are the party of law and order. They say it all the time. They want to defund the FBI, etc. Marco Rubio, his comment yesterday was that this jury is a joke. So not a lot of respect for the legal process or the justice system. Thoughts?
Or the jury.
Or the jury.
Has Marco met the jury? That's what I had a follow-up. Did Joe Perticone get a follow-up? That was what confused me. How did he know?
Yeah.
Had he interviewed them?
Joe Perticone did get that, didn't he?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was a Bulwark exclusive. If you guys aren't signed up for the Bulwark newsletters, you can get this stuff for free. Go to thebulwark.com and get it. Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. The state of New York does not like Donald Trump. It's almost like they know him. Like he lived there for a while. Yeah. I have like a lot of thoughts about this. Can I just start with saying,
sure.
That JVL, you and I talked about this in the Secret podcast. I was not sure. I don't think either of us were sure that the E Jean Carroll case was going to produce much in the way of news or results or accountability. But this is the first time there's been like an actual judgment against Trump, right? This is a civil case, so he's found liable as opposed to guilty. But he does have to pay her money, and that's a real thing. I am a little surprised, and I guess I don't quite know how I feel about the ability to bring a case 20-some years later. Like, I do have some complicated feelings about that. Lots of, memories are thin at that point. But the thing is the reason that I suspect they found him guilty is for the reason that you just said. The deposition was revealed Trump to be the person that we know him to be, but it was like, an extra special level of vile. What he says in that deposition is he says, for the last 1,000,000 years, unfortunately or fortunately, stars have been able to do this. And what's interesting about that is that it went from, this is locker room talk, which was how he described the Access Hollywood case, to canon, to an absolute truth that has been around for millennia.
Biblical.
Just the birds and the bees.
This
Back
is
to
just
life.
how things work. And I think that my guess is that 5 million, that judgment, is actually just a jury being like, you're a disgusting, despicable human being, and I have no doubt that you did something bad here because of the way you're talking about this. And there was sort of a great moment where he kept saying, because he's the most disgusting person ever, that he couldn't have sexually assaulted her because she is not his type. And so at one point, he is shown a picture of E Jean Carroll, who he then says, well, that's Marla Maples, my wife, my ex, this a woman he had married. And so he confuses them. So this woman who is not his type apparently looks identical enough to a woman that he married for him to confuse them, which is just crazy. This guy, not all his marbles. So anyway, I think that the judgment is really just against Trump for being, and I'm not sure, I have like some complicated feelings
it really
about
is
that.
something. Can we just rest on that for a second? Because people have used that analogy very quick in, Twitter dunking settings, but like not recognizing and I know I'm significantly younger than Donald Trump, but it would be like, I find it very hard to imagine that somebody would show me a picture of Tyler from when we first started, or someone else from when we first started dating, and me to be like, that's Tyler. And then like, no, that's Trevor, somebody from Montana. Like, what? I mean, I think it speaks to him losing his marbles, but also just the utter narcissism of this man. Like, he never really actually contemplated his own one of his many wives, like, features in a detailed enough way. He never processed it in a detailed enough way to be able to like to tell her apart from just any other made up plot.
Yeah. If you haven't watched the deposition tapes, you should go. I think those are the things that sunk Donald Trump more than the specifics of the allegation.
I mean, it does seem to me, we had talked, right, about how one of the things that when he was president, the White House counsels tried to do was prevent him from ever testifying for anything, right? And there was even a moment in one of the many reports about this where one of the White House lawyers is quoted by somebody else as saying, you cannot let him testify because he will simply lie under oath without even, knowing that he's doing it.
Or tell the truth under oath.
Both
are bad. Both are bad for him.
And this deposition shows that this guy can never be put under oath and sworn in to testify, right? And every lawyer going forward has to know that you cannot. Right? I mean, in the Alvin Bragg case, in any other cases that are to follow, Trump can't be allowed to testify. And I do wonder what this does for his ability to get future legal representation. I mean, if you're Joe Tapioca, you come out of this thinking, thank God I got away with my life, and like some shred of my reputation is another competent lawyer going to want to take that risk.
Do you think Joey T is back on the payroll for one of these other cases?
Would he be
after
willing
that
to?
L?
I don't
think
so.
L?
I don't think so. But
I think he quit his job to take this job.
Good Lord.
I think probably needs a client.
So it's
can we do the political of this a little bit?
Not yet. Well, on one second,
Okay.
we'll get to that. The last thing I want to get is to, though, the judge instructing the jurors, look, I can't tell you what to do because you're all grown-ass adults, but if my strong suggestion would be don't tell anybody that you were on this jury, which I think is sensible advice, and also is a statement about where we are as a country, which is a problem, maybe? No?
It also speaks to this Marco thing. I think it speaks to both. Just back to the Marco thing that Joe asked him about yesterday. it's like, like he's just blindly condemning a group of people based on like their residence in New York City, I guess, right? Like because it's not as if it's not like the situation with the woman in Georgia who was out there on the interview circuit, who was on the grand jury. It's not like it's been one of those situations where you know all these people and can have been able to render a verdict on their, humanity. I mean, it's just like it is again to our asymmetry, like the notion that Chris Murphy, would be like, well, you can't trust a jury in Alabama. All those yokels, like it would just be filleted, right, for days over something like that. But that is what the market.
He impugn the reputation of the intellectual, the great minds of Alabama. How dare this elitist Democrat Marxist BLM sympathizer, right? That's what we get.
Yeah, so that's part of it. But the security part, I don't know. I don't know that I have deep thoughts on it. But it is sad, but it's true. It was sensible advice. But like, and this is the real world that we're in now. In a week where we had a white nationalist mass murder at a mall.
All right, so let's hit the political stuff. Sarah, this means he's finished now, right? Because Ron DeSantis is gonna take dead aim at this stuff. Ronnie D is gonna go to town on Trump. He's gonna open a can of whoop ass and talk about how, look, a jury of his peers found that Donald Trump is liable for sexual assault, and how could we let this man be the standard bearer for our grand old party? Is that what's happening, Sarah?
I got two things on this. One, we did a focus group last week of two-time Trump voters, and we asked about the E Jean Carroll case. And only one person had heard about it. And I think that's important. And JBL, when you and I first talked about this, like, I remember you brought it up and I was like, I'm not actually following this that closely. And
to be clear, I'm sorry. Did you mean that they had heard of it or that they had followed the story?
No, they hadn't heard of it. They didn't know what I was talking about. Didn't know what we're talking about. So I think that's an important...
Do the voice, Sarah. Do the voice.
I'm not... These fucking guys. No. Hold on. This is important, though. This is one of these media silo situations, right? It did look like Fox News eventually covered it a little bit yesterday. Like they did the breaking news, this is happening. And then Murdoch is kind of out together. But like people who are deeper in the ecosystem, and I don't know how much recrimination he really faced on Fox News. I did see Andy McCarthy seem to... ding him a little bit. But, the question is like Fox is already right now like hemorrhaging viewers. And so how far are they willing to go on this? I don't think they're going to give it wall-to-wall coverage. So maybe after the verdict, if we're going to do a group today, but, will people have heard of it now? Maybe more so. But it's important to know, one, a lot of people hadn't heard about it. Okay. Secondly, when we sort of said, hey, here's what's going on, we heard a thing that we hear all the time, which is that voters really compartmentalize the moral depravities of Trump. It's not that they say, I don't care, and these aren't bad. Some of them say that, but for the most part, people are like, I don't like the tweeting, his mouth or the way he treats women. I mean, nobody says the rapey stuff, but they sort of like lump it all together, like the tweets and they say, I don't like that, but I think he was a good president. I like how he handled the economy. I liked and they compartmentalize it, but they want to do the throat clearing, the moral throat clearing, so that that they don't think it's okay. And that's a certain bucket of voters. These are often DeSantis people, or like they're like move on from Trumpers or maybe Trumpers. Then there's the always Trumpers and how they think about this, which is different. This is just them being, I guess, libs, the media, never Trumpers, the establishment, whoever. This is just them trying to get Trump because they know Trump can win and they're afraid of Trump. And that's why they love him. And you saw this
evidence of his strength.
It's right. You saw this in Tommy Tuberville's tweet, right? Where he says, this makes me want to vote for Trump twice. And so there's a big group of voters who feel like that, who the more they come for Trump, the more evidence it is that Trump is their guy and the right person to punch back with.
Could we get Jeb to come out and defend Trump on the E Jean Carroll stuff? Maybe that would make a dent.
Yeah.
Poor Jeb alone. The hadn't heard of it thing relates to one of my complaints about yesterday, one of my little rants I wanted to go on, which was who's responsible for them not having heard of it, right? Obviously, in the Triangle of Doom, the media is part of it, conservative media, but the politicians and the leaders are partially part of it.
Right.
And I was interested yesterday to see that on the Hill, Joe and others who are asking the senators about this. You got, senators, the senators who know better, saying ish sort of the right things, right? John Thune was like, I just don't, this is, I think, a mark against him. I don't know I can win. Kevin Cramer ended up with 2 Dakota senators there. There's something in the water in the Dakotas, said that also said there's a mark against him on the ledger, et cetera. And it wasn't, they weren't railing against him. They weren't, getting on their moral high horse. But, they were saying this is wrong, this isn't good. But here's the thing. It takes Joe Perticone and Manu Raju and Garrett Hake asking them about this in order to say anything. And then their response is reported in the Bulwark and MSNBC and CNN, right? Breaking, George Santos has turned himself in as we're taping this. All right. We'll get to that in a second. That's one for the good guys.
Wait, do we know that he actually turned himself in, or did he just say that he turned himself in?
Or is it an alter ego? Is it an alter ego that turned itself in? Okay, anyway, back to the thing, though. And so I do think that this is the Republican elites just decade-long failing now, right? And I think that the people that you're talking about, Sarah, not the Tommy Tuberville crowd, but that first group that DeSantis absolutely needs if he wants to win, or anyone would need if they wanted to beat Trump in a primary, like that group is movable. If these people were out there in their ears on the platforms that they listen to, that they watch, saying, this is bad, he's unelectable, a good person doesn't do this. Like it was, wrong of him to what he said. And, I don't know the specifics of this case, but there have been many accusers and he said it live on tape that he likes grabbing people by the P word. Like if they were out there doing that, not just to Joe Perticone, but to on the Daily Wire and in their conservative radio hits, like that could have a meaningful difference. And it just doesn't raise to that level for these guys. And I think that it's particularly cowardly because, guys like John Thune and Kevin Cramer, they're not at threat. It's not like they have this imminent threat of losing an election coming down over their head, and they're just being cautious. They've learned all the wrong lessons for the last 7 years, and they refuse to do anything that might move the needle even a little bit against Donald Trump.
Can I just tag onto this because this is my
please.
rant too, and just to say that Republicans have agency here. That the only way that Donald Trump, this has political consequences for Donald Trump, is if Republicans decide that it needs to have political consequences for Donald Trump. And the fact that the elected officials, and they all kind of wimp out and do I don't think he's electable in the general thing because that's their safe space. Say he's morally deficient. Say what Mitt Romney says. If they all were saying that, if his rivals were hammering him, his 2024 rivals, but when they come to his defense, when they say things like, well, the jury's idiots or whatever, and I don't know if we've seen a statement by Nikki Haley, we haven't seen anything from it, or if they just choose silence. If they just choose silence, they become part of the permission structure to continue to vote for this guy again. And this idea of it's the never Trumpers' fault, it's the media's fault. No. And you know what? Yes, it's Republican voters, but it's these Republican electeds. They have agency. They can make a news cycle that Republicans hear if they want to. They choose not to.
Can I tell you the funniest quote of the day?
Yeah.
I was pulling this up on the same point. Republican sources tell Bob Costa that they do not see this moment as the beginning of the political collapse of former President Donald Trump, but there is the possibility of a slow erosion of support.
There is the
that
possibility
out there. Now, I'm not going to do anything.
Erosion.
I'm not going to do anything to try to erode it.
In 14 or 15 months, he might be down to 55%.
Yeah, who knows? And it's, that statement is true in the in the most narrow sense, and that eventually Donald Trump's support will slightly erode. You would imagine he'll die or something will happen eventually that will make his support slightly erode.
I do want to. I mean, I just want to snap us back to 35,000 feet, though. My pal Bernie Belvedere mentioned this today. The idea that a guy who lost as an incumbent president by 7 million votes, who is impeached twice, who is under criminal indictment on 34 counts, who is just found liable for sexual assault, is currently at 60% with a 40-point lead over the next guy in the most recent poll for the Republican nomination, is insane, and is the kind of thing that if we were just sitting in 2015 and I had, said to you, hey, this is going to happen, what would you like to bet that this is going to happen? You'd have been willing to bet your house on it.
Yeah, that's true. I know I would have.
Like, it's insane.
The interesting thing about all that for me is, and I hate to do this, but, we got to do this like one every 10 podcasts, is, not one of those guys has been like, you guys were really right about this. I just like one really right. I was reading a Jim Garrity post the other day just talking about how hopeless all the candidates he likes are. I was like, if Asa Hutchinson or Nikki, he's like, I like all these, but we need to be realistic. They need to drop out if they have to, because, otherwise it's just like, at any point when you're typing that, when you're like, all of the candidates I like are absolutely hopeless because none of my peers would even consider voting for them, does it ever, like, the thought ever cross your brain that, like, maybe
the party's gone rotten. Maybe it's bad and I should stop defending it all.
How about Ross Douthat yesterday talking about how constrained Trump will be in a second term because he doesn't even really want to be there.
This was not on our show notes. I have to rant about it, though.
Ross should be fired. This guy is a bad take machine.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sometimes JVL goes a little overboard on Ross. Sometimes, JVL has a bee in his bonnet, and I love you for it. But this tweet was the stupidest fucking tweet I think I've ever seen from a credible mainstream pundit. Who he was legitimately making the argument that he said that the most important VP selection in history would be Donald Trump's VP selection because that person would have power since Donald Trump doesn't. And I'm like, the opposite. It's the least important vice presidential choice in history. Donald Trump. Like, have you been awake? Like, you think it matters if Donald Trump picked who? I don't know. Whoever Ross Douthat likes. Like, you think it would matter if he picked Rick Santorum?
Was his
if he picked like some Catholic integralist? Do you think that would matter? What are you talking about?
Do you think Ross's arms are like super tired from carrying the goalposts? How far he's got to carry them to justify? I thought Trump wasn't happening, Ross. I thought there wasn't going to be a coup, and then I thought we weren't going to like Trump anymore, and DeSantis was going to be great.
Trump is weakening.
And
you wrote a couple of those columns.
Yeah. Now we're already picking his VP?
Now
that's going to matter?
Now we're justifying, now it's going to be okay, because Ross's new theory is that, like, well, Trump's going to die. Because that's the only way that anything good happens. He's saying he's got to die.
Great.
So it's about his VP.
Out. It's just like, were you not awake for John Kelly? Like, we did this. We did all this. Mike Pence, John Kelly, he's bringing in the adults, the Committee to Save America. He tried to have his last vice president hanged. And you think the next one is going to kind of corral him?
Don't be such an alarmist, Tim. Don't be such an alarmist.
Jesus Christ.
All right. Speaking of some polls, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is popping somewhere around 10 and 20% of the Democratic primary, which is fascinating to me. And I will ask you guys the question I posed to readers today. If Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was running in the Republican primary, what number do you think he'd be polling right now? I think somewhere between 10 and 20% as well, but maybe higher. Thoughts?
Sarah, do you want to go?
I don't know. I made this joke on Hacks on Tap yesterday. I've said this to be like, I just think if Robert Kennedy was running in the Republican primary, he'd be doing way better. and he'd be like a
I don't
legit.
think that's a joke, actually.
No, it's well. I
yeah.
mean, I made the joke, but I think it's true. I think he'd be a legit contender in a Republican primary. And for people who are like, well, with the last name Kennedy, he wouldn't do good with Republicans. Are you kidding? With the last name Trump, he did just fine. These former Democrats, like these Democrats who turn into anti-vaxxing conspiracy lunatics, the right loves those guys. Tulsi Gabbard.
Taibbi,
Tulsi
Glenn
Gabbard.
Greenwald,
People
Tulsi
think
Gabbard vote.
everyone thinks she should be Trump's VP. Her name comes up a lot. They love her. So I think Tulsi, I think RFK, I think they'd all do great in a Republican primary.
Better than Nikki Haley and Mike
Absolutely.
Pence.
Oh, not even
Right.
close.
RFK would be
Vivek
doubling up.
Ramaswamy's currently tied with the vice president of the United States, the last vice president, with 100% name ID.
Yeah, and what do people know about Vivek Ramaswamy? They're like, they know that
they
he's
see
some
him on
guy that
Fox,
goes on
and he
Fox
hates
that
the
doesn't like
elites.
woke people. He doesn't
Does
like
not
woke.
like the wokes.
That's literally all they know about him. I know the Kennedy thing is a boost. Again, this just shows that the old line pundit class and Mitch McConnell Republican establishment class has just is willfully ignorant to what is actually happening in their party. They do not listen to the media outlets that their voters listen to. They do not spend any time with the voters. This is true about all the contrarian Substackers. God love Substack. Andrew Sullivan, that whole crowd, all of them. They live in liberal spaces. They live in elite big cities. The types of Republicans they know are not the types of Republicans in Sarah's focus group. The types of Republicans in Sarah's focus group have no interest in Nikki Haley, and they would be quite interested in Robert Kennedy because he's a Kennedy. Because the biggest driving motivation for them is that it's a troll. It's a troll of the left. It's like, oh man, we won over JFK's nephew. We got him on our
side. But in
side.
the QAnon mythology, John
JFK
F.
Jr.
Kennedy Jr. is on Trump's side.
Yeah, right.
Like he is still alive because he faked his own death.
Alive.
No, but this is the whole.
He's alive. I met him actually at CPAC. Seriously, the person they think is JFK Jr. So anyway, I think in serious, I was being serious, but just in brass tacks on the polling, I think that when we have been talking about could another person emerge, as DeSantis goes down, and all the normie pundits are like, well, could Nikki get a boost, or might Brian Kemp get in, or whatever. No, Tulsi, RFK, those are the people that we're talking about. And I think that if RFK ran a serious campaign, right now, if he jumped in, he might be at 5 or 6 because people aren't thinking about him as a Republican candidate. And but if he ran a serious campaign that was like, I love Mr. Trump, but he gave in a little too much to the deep state, and I'm very worried about the surveillance state, and I'm and the
vaccines,
and the vaccines, and he just focused the campaign on that, and kind of ran from that angle, which nobody has against Trump. I think that that person, whether that be Tulsi or RFK or somebody else, would be a strong third, and maybe closing in on second. Maybe closing in on second right now. Yeah.
But he's polling weirdly high in the Democratic primary.
Yeah.
So we should talk about that.
I think there are two things at play here. I would love to see somebody do a deep, so this is just my instinct. I think that right now I think that there's probably 5% of the Democratic base, maybe it's even 8%, that kind of likes this. They're Chapo, Democratic lefties, it's the horseshoe, and they haven't jumped the horseshoe yet. Hell, maybe it's 12%. It's not 21%. We know that from other Democratic primaries, but maybe it's 12%. Then I think there's another category of people that is, I think, probably bigger than the first category or equal. That is, Joe Biden is old, and this person's last name is Kennedy, and I'm registering that I think it should be someone else besides Joe Biden. And you could put any name in there. Doesn't matter. And I would choose that person over Joe Biden because I'm registering my concerns about Joe Biden's age. I think that is why he's at 21% in the Democratic primary. So, and I think that first group is a little bit concerning, but it's just such a rump. And I really would consider it to be like the equivalent of the never-Trumper of the Republican Party, just like a total rump, small portion of the Democratic base.
This is the problem, right? I mean, the problem is that those people have literally zero influence in the Democratic Party itself, whereas on the Republican side, the people who they are very comfortable with, the Alex Joneses,
run the party.
Those people own the party.
What's your take, Sarah? Do you assess my breakdown of his 21% accurately?
I do, although I think you're right about the protest. I was also going to be like, there's just like a chunk of low info. Like,
Kennedy.
This guy's last name's Kennedy. I don't know. Like, I still think, I think Bobby's alive. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, that's out there. Quick debt ceiling before we get to, or do we want to do to George Santos? Did we just say enough about George Santos?
I would like to say one thing about George Santos, I guess. Anthony DeVolder, Kitara Ravache. It's kind of sad that the first drag queen in Congress ends up being George Santos. Maybe there's something to those critiques of drag queens and their moral turpitude. I think that it's really telling that Kevin's answer to this question is still, if he's found guilty, we'll push him out of the conference. I mean, I just think it just shows how ingrained, the apologia is. I mean, like, this guy just got, I don't, it just happened, so I just glanced at it, but I think it was 7 counts. It's wire fraud. It's
like
defrauding the government.
Violation, yeah.
And that's just a start. He's also under investigation in Brazil. I hope that Lula and Biden are cooperating on this so that justice can be served to George Santos in 2 countries. But it is pretty telling that, again, like, Mitt, as moral conscience of the party, is like the only one to say like the right thing to say, which is, okay, maybe we can't resign this guy, but at least you should go sit in the back in shame. We just Steve Scalise said we removed him from all his committees, but like, that doesn't actually do anything, which was already done. So that's my Anthony DeVolder hot take. I mostly just wanted to marinate in my happiness of bad things happening to bad people, which is, as JVL says, the sweetest nectar.
All right, Sarah, do you have anything before we hit debt ceiling?
Only every member of Congress on the Republican side is very important to Kevin right now. He needs every single vote he can get, and when they go down, it makes this current debt ceiling fight even more interesting. Razor's edge.
Speaking of this debt ceiling, and on this, just really quick, as a transition to the debt ceiling, the Nancy Mace. Do you see the Nancy Mace profile that the Times did?
Only an excerpt.
It was not quite as effusive as the Liz Holmes profile that the New York Times did, which was like, oh my god.
That I read.
Yeah. Oh my god. Literally, that is insane. It's insane. The person had a sentence in there that was like, my editor told me that I was being snowed by Elizabeth Holmes, and I don't think I am. And like, they put that sentence in the piece about being snowed by. Anyway, sorry, I got off track.
I can't believe the Times would run something that the editor thinks the report. I mean, that to me is such malpractice.
Yeah. Anyway, the Nancy Mace thing in the Times revealed just how tenuous this all is, because there have been her big shtick in this piece is that she's independent because there were all these things that she was pushing back on McCarthy on, but she ends up coming back on board on all of them, right? Because he can't afford, if you had a bigger majority, you could afford letting Nancy Mace do some protest votes to show she's independent. But you can't do that because you can't trust any of the Matt Gaetz insane people on the right. So you need Nancy on everything. And so Nancy is like, well, I'm going to criticize him and then vote for him. And he's going to give these kind of, mysterious concessions. Anyway, so I think that, speaks to the tenuousness of his position here at the debt ceiling.
That said, are you surprised? I mean, he got that first vote through.
I am surprised.
And so I would say, we were all predicting that the debt ceiling thing was going to be just a catastrophe for him. And so far, he's not in a strong position, but he's not really in a weaker position than Biden. They're both sort of equally weak going into this negotiation, and his conference stood behind him.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I think he's in a stronger position than Biden, and here's why. Your friend Ben Wittes, JBL's best friend Ben Wittes, did a really good analogy on this. So I'm just going to completely ape it from him. And it is, if you're in a game of chicken, okay, and you're both driving the car 80 miles an hour at each other, and you're driving your car, and you know that the other guy coming at you is making the calculation that they are more likely to survive a head-on collision with you than they are to survive if they wimp out. That's a very tough position to be in, and that's the position Biden's in. Because Kevin McCarthy looks at this and he's like, if I crash this economy, maybe Biden takes the blame for that. Maybe Democrats take the blame for that. We'll see how it shakes out. I don't know. But if I cave to Biden, then I'm certainly going to be tarred and feathered by my own crazies. Okay, so I think in a weird way, Kevin is kind of in a stronger position, not to, at least with regards to the negotiations, because he has more, because of just the stakes, not that he's in a stronger political position.
I think that's right. Can I just ask you, I have a question, a serious one. Are you cynical enough? Do you think Republicans are cynical enough? Is McCarthy
Yes.
cynical enough that he would risk the entire country's full faith and credit, right? I mean, you think there's like no doubt in your mind. Because I was talking to reporters about this, and I couldn't quite get myself to go there to say that I believed that McCarthy would tank the economy because Biden will take the blame, which, by the way, Biden will take the blame. Like, he is the president of the United States. Nobody talk about people not knowing about the E Jean Carroll thing. This process story only becomes vivid and real for voters when it has a personal consequence for them. And when they look up because their 401k is taking a massive hit or whatever, they're not going to be like, let me go back and read all the Punch Bowl news articles about the brinksmanship on this. They're going to be like, the president of the United States. Why is this? Why did this happen?
I'd go a step further, Sarah. They will react, even if it doesn't touch them personally, in the way that they have over the last 2 years, where even though unemployment has been at 4% and they're personally doing very well, and in the surveys they say that their life is great, they say that we're on the wrong track and things are terrible, and this is.
Well, that's because
I agree,
rent
100%.
is up 8%. Their rental is up 8%. Groceries are up 7%, and it is making a meaningful dent. I mean, the futures are up right now for Walmart because people who make over $100,000 have started shopping there to save on food.
Yeah, inflation's up 4.5% here, JVL. Come on, I want to go back to Sarah's.
It's terrible.
I think
it's
that
terrible.
what Kevin is
I'm
banking-
agreeing with you.
this-
I'm just agreeing with you more enthusiastically, Sarah. I'm saying that they will absolutely blame Biden.
Yeah, so someone said with their own background that they think that McCarthy is banking on not McCarthy, excuse me. That they think that like the market and like the normal closet normals are banking on like a TARP moment. You remember when like the banks had to happen in 2007, I guess it was it 08? It was 08.
No, it was 08. It was 08.
And it was like
October.
they had this vote in Congress, like, and they're like not going to bail them out, and like they were going to let the banks clap, and the stock market tanked for a few hours, and then like it's prevailed.
Too big to fail.
Okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna even reluctantly, we're gonna do this. I think that is what they're banking on happening. And I don't know. It's just a different Republican Congress. And I don't know that a stock market tank over this would move them necessarily.
On the other hand, I would like to ask: is it sustainable to live in a political dynamic in which the debt ceiling fight only happens when the president is a Democrat? Because Democrats didn't hold the American economy hostage when the debt ceiling was increased under Trump. Like, is
sure.
that sustainable?
I don't know what you mean by
you Democrats
sustainable.
have to understand that whenever you hold the presidency and the debt ceiling comes up, you are going to be held at the point of a gun because you're a responsible governing party and the other one isn't. The other side isn't.
Well,
Good
I'll
luck.
answer that question a different way. I don't know if it's sustainable, but I do think that is a calculus that is factoring into the Democrats, considering that the Biden administration, I think, seems like seriously considering they're just going to go out this solo and fight it out in the courts, right? I think them decides the 14th Amendment and says by executive order, we can deal this, we can deal with this administratively, and I'm not going to negotiate with the administration's going to do it, and you can if you want. And we'll just see everybody in court and kick the can on this. I think that the legal experts, I don't know exactly what the run of show would be on that, but from a political standpoint, I saw Dan Pfeiffer was arguing that they do that, and I've seen a bunch of other prominent Democrats arguing that they do that. And I think that that what you're saying, JBL, is factoring into that thought, right? Which is like, why are we doing this to ourselves? I think that has some other negative externalities, right? When it's like, oh, because the Republican Democrats just get to act like monarchical now when we're in power, but on the other hand, there's a practical element here.
I'll just register how much I'm against the 14th Amendment play, and that what Biden should do, in my opinion, is negotiate with McCarthy, do what he said he was going to do, I can work with Republicans. All right, that's a big part of his pitch. And he should live up to that pitch right now, and he should go back and give McCarthy some kind of deal. They make some cuts. On the biggest, broadest question of are we spending too much, Republicans aren't exactly wrong. And so if they and then Biden should say, I'm going to work with Kevin McCarthy. We're going to hammer something out. And Kevin's going to have to go take that deal back to his guys who don't want to pass that deal, and give it back to him and let him go. Let those guys say, no, we're not going to raise the debt ceiling under any circumstances. Okay? I think that he should do the right thing and jam McCarthy up. And I do not think he should do the 14th Amendment. And I think people who rationalize this stuff, just like the court packing and everything else, it's like, well, because we're right and they're wrong. I think that's a bad way to govern.
I think ultimately Biden is likely to do exactly what you suggest, Sarah.
Yeah, I hope so.
And
I don't think so.
He's
he's
unlikely to get any credit from voters.
I think they will. I have no inside info. It's just a sense.
All right. Tucker Carlson has taken his talents to Twitter. That's a sports ball reference, Sarah.
Is it?
Yeah. Do you want to explain it to him or no?
Just roll through it. That's the kind of thing you just roll through.
It's just a normal sentence. I understood it. Doesn't have any particular resonance to sports. It's just a normal sentence.
Yeah.
Anyway, what do you guys think? It's a big deal. Twitter is going to become a broadcast platform now that it's the X Corporation. It's going to become the everything app. We're going to be doing payments on it probably, and also WhatsApp style communication probably. I don't know. It seems to me that neither Tucker nor Elon understand all that much about platforms. And at best, maybe this winds up like Rumble, and at worst, it's Quibi.
Yeah, I don't think that that it's a winner at all. I don't. I think that Tony Rosh and Post made a good point, which is like the nice thing of being on cable is that terrestrial cable's viewer would be going down, but then you get all the bonus views of people clipping you on Twitter and all this. Doesn't work in reverse. If your show on Twitter, like Fox, who just fired you, isn't about to show the clips. And you say really racist stuff for MSNBC to show it. So, you know what I mean? It limits your reach. I think Tucker incorrectly thinks that he's doing Twitter because if he went into the O'Reilly route, nobody will talk about him. I think he correctly sees that nobody talks about O'Reilly. So if I go to a streaming thing where you got to pay $10 a month to get me, I'll get rich, but nobody will talk me. Okay, I think that's the correct assessment. He then makes the incorrect assessment then, okay, what I should do instead is go to Twitter where people will talk about me, and I don't know, we'll figure out the money stuff on the back end. Maybe he doesn't need money, and maybe that doesn't. I don't think that you have the influence that you think, because people don't consume Twitter that way. They scroll through Twitter and watch videos on Twitter. And as for like the monetization thing, like Elon, it might work as a niche monetization thing. You make money with in the weird conservative ghetto, but I don't know anyone normal that is going to give Elon Musk their credit card information and shit. And I saw this tweet from Elon that was like, I will know that our encryption. I will know that our encryption works when someone comes in my office, puts a gun to my head and says, Elon, can you read someone else's DMs? And I get on the keyboard and realize that I can't. I'm like, that's an insane thing to say. That is an insane thing to tweet. Like anybody who is thinking that they might try to get into my DMs with a gun to their head is someone who I'm not giving any of my data or information to at all. So I think that that's the business problem with it.
I don't think that Tucker seems to realize how much of his audience was over the age of 65. Like, he was winning in the, like, coveted 18 to 45
to
demo.
54 or whatever it is.
Yeah, like, he is winning that slot, but, like, a lot of his viewers are too old to figure out how to become a subscriber to his Twitter show. I don't know I don't know if this is going to make Twitter go under. I got to say, like, Twitter has gotten markedly worse, but it's, like, still enough the same that, like, I still use it. And listen, I have, as I've gotten older, you know, Tim and I used to burn a smoke together in our 20s. Like, I used to have a lot of vices. Now my vices are fewer. And Twitter's really one of them. And I'm, like, committed to this vice. I do not want to give it up. And, you know, I'm mad about how crappy they're making it, but I still don't think it kills it. Like, too many of us is, like, it is where we go to have the political conversations we want to have with the people we want to have them with. And until somebody provides an alternative that is basically exactly like Twitter that we all go to, I don't.
And then
I
how
don't
do you
think
get people on there? Give them money, I guess. It's like, it's not days of zero interest rates where you can be like, hey, I'll give everybody a $10 entry fee if you jump over this guy. Like, maybe that would do it. People would go somewhere for money, but how do they do it? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, that's what Substack Notes is, right? I mean, Substack Notes is we're going to let you monetize your audience with newsletters, and so here's a social network for it. Blue Sky is banking on status.
You guys,
the
it's
idea
called Blue
becomes-
Sky.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not called Blue Ski.
I don't think so.
It's
I
one
believe
word.
it's Blue Sky.
Pretty sure it's Blue Sky.
You think it's Blueski?
You think it's Blusky?
I know
Ah,
that.
I will tell you.
I know
I will
the
tell you
T.
in
You've been
my
reading
head.
it as Blusky?
I will tell you in my head because it is one word when written. I've only ever seen it written. You're the first people I've heard say it out loud. And Blue Ski
It's Blusky.
it's
Blusky. Find that Polish, the last name of that, Mary Ann Blusky, who was one of your teammates in your high school basketball team. Nice Polish family from central Pennsylvania.
The cartoon.
Don't think so.
Can I do one? Can I do one of accountability podcasting here?
Sure.
Again, we're only a few weeks in, but the ratings, we had a question on this podcast 3 weeks ago about whether this was the hamster situation or whether that Tucker had a unique audience, and we didn't really know, and some of it leaning towards the hamster with the pellet side of things, and it seems like he had a real audience. I mean, Craze on Friday beat Tucker, not in the demo, in total, not beat the 8 o'clock Fox hour, not in the demo, but in total viewers, so including the seniors who are just getting their pellet. All right, so do you think that there's something to be said there that connects back to our conversation from earlier about why Tulsi and RFK and we have a better chance in the primary than Nikki Haley? Like, there's a big group of people that don't want generic anymore.
Yeah. Well, I was certainly wrong about that one. Pun of accountability. All right. Guys, been a good show. Been a long show. Next week, by the way, we're doing this live at 3 p.m. We're going to all be in the same place together.
It's at 3 p.m.?
3 p.m.
We're doing our live shows in the afternoon? Oh.
No, we're doing
This
two
show,
live shows
this
next
show
week.
will be live.
Two live shows.
Right.
It's going to be
I know. I was
amazing.
Next level
upstairs.
on YouTube.
We were doing the studio. We've been building the studio yesterday. Barry thinks it should have pink lighting.
Tim will be
I like
licking
that.
my face. It's going to be fantastic. I can't wait to get COVID again. It's been, almost 10 months since I've had COVID. So that'll be wonderful. Tune in, come to the channel, and you'll get it. And if you are in the New York area, you could still grab tickets to come see us on the 18th. And in the meantime, go over to thebulwark.com. Sign up for all this stuff. Get Charlie's fantastic newsletter. Subscribe to his podcast. Hit the like button. Subscribe to this show. Give us 5 stars. I haven't checked the reviews in a week. I hope they're good. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.